Hello, everyone. Good morning. Please let me know if you can hear me very well or not.
We can.
I didn't hear anything, but I guess that I can be heard. So thank you for joining. We are starting our fourth session of the update on Ukrainian agriculture, and the war in Ukraine. And of course, the world to rebuild rural Ukraine. So first of all, thank you for your attention and for your participation in our projects, and we will be grateful if you could spread the word about what we are doing to your colleagues. This week, the World Journal, the magazine, The Economist, came up with such a front page. And there is a reason for that, because as you know, Ukraine is one of the biggest exporters of wheat through the world, and not only wheat, by the way. And therefore, the war in Ukraine is greatly influencing the supplies of this produce. The first to be touched or to be suffering are the countries that cannot afford purchasing these commodities very expensively, and therefore the availability of that vital products are going to be limited for them. Hopefully, our government, as well as the partnered governments, allies in Europe and other countries, will be able to provide the solutions. And today we will be talking about four main things. Number one, about the actual war in Ukraine, so how the situation has changed over the last 2 weeks. Secondly, we will talk about the planting season in the fields of Ukraine and the difficulties that farmers are facing with. Thirdly, we will speak about the export, the actual problem that resulted in this magazine's cover. And finally, we will talk about the World to Rebuild Rural Ukraine reports on what was done over the 2 weeks. So now let's move on to the presentations. And before that, I would like, okay, so it says my sharing screen is paused. Let me restart it. So before starting the presentation, I would like to say thank you to all who participated, and I can see that some of you are here. Dr. Charles Stoltnow, Mr. Nate Bloom, also Dr. Kelly Tillman and Dr. Chris DeFonso, and many others who are supporting us in this tour to promote the World to Rebuild Rural Ukraine project, and to everyone who participated in the actual donations. With your help, we are moving towards the goal, and we will get there for sure. So right now I'm starting the slides. Please let me know if you can see it full screen, because sometimes it is just, can you see it full screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so here is the part of Ukraine that is under active military actions. So as you can see, Kharkiv, this is the next oblast that Ukrainian forces are freeing from Russian troops. And every day we hear the new name of the village that has been freed from Russian forces, but after that comes the news that are not that positive. The news what the soldiers have done to the village and to the people there. Among those are not only the civilians killed, but also the bad things they were doing to civilians and their families, like tortures, and also the the damages deliberately done to the infrastructure and to the buildings there. So if we go to the east, you know that since 2014, two oblasts. Oblast, it is similar to the state. This is the administrative region, just smaller than the state in the United States of America. These two oblasts had parts of them under the active war, but in case with Donetsk Oblast, a majority of it was still controlled by Ukraine until the beginning of this war. Currently, Russians are doing what they can to close this circle. They want to circle the Ukrainian military in this region. And if they succeed to meet here, this is, as far as we understand, their major goal, they will be able to proceed to the central Ukraine. However, our troops are strongly settled in their positions, and they are not allowing the Russians to move further. So, by the way, speaking of the Kharkiv region, 23 towns and villages were already freed, liberated from the invaders. Right now, we have a second, or maybe the next aim of the Russians, the missiles-wise. So if you remember, starting from the 24th of February, they were bombing, first of all, the airports. Then they started bombing the barracks of the soldiers. Like, for example, next to Lviv, there is a training field, and they destroyed it totally. It is just within a couple of miles from the border. Then they targeted the hospitals and schools for some reason. After that, they destroyed majority of the very important and huge storages of fuel. That is why in Ukraine, number one problem that everyone is facing after the actual threat from the missiles is the lack of fuel. The prices gone up twice. However, you still can't get the fuel, and the people are standing in lines in order to get about a little less than 10 gallons, 30 liters at one time. And at times they do not even succeed to get this amount. And right now, the Russians are targeting mainly two objects. First of all, the railway infrastructure, because Ukrainian railway plays a very important role in supply of the military ammunition and equipment to the east, evacuation of the people from the east to the west. And of course, right now, railway is the only thing that can be used, the only alternative to the seaports to use for export of grains. Therefore, I am personally familiar with the CEO of the Ukrainian railway, and he's having very important role right now in the total situation, in the total war situation in Ukraine. And of course, the civilians, the blocks where the civilians live. Recently, over last week, huge amounts of villages were damaged in Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast. In some of them, the missiles alarm didn't get quiet, didn't turn off for over months, because the missiles that are coming from here towards Ukraine, they fly over these villages and Ukrainian anti-missile system, it doesn't know where the missile is flying to. However, the whole trajectory is under alarm usually. So the second point that everybody have heard, but it hasn't yet been resolved fully, is the escape or the surrender or giving up. There are a lot of versions of Ukrainian soldiers in the actual steel factory in Mariupol. Russians media, of course, say that they were captured as hostages and they gave up. However, Ukrainian media, they ask us to be quiet and do not spread any rumors about that, because they want the rescue program to be over. What we know for sure, that majority, like 99, almost every civilian has been freed from this location, from the actual plant, because underneath the plant there is a lot of tunnels. This is a very old plant, and it was built during the Cold War. So these things were like a must in the construction of facilities like that. Therefore, people were hiding there. And first thing, they allowed people to leave, but not towards the Ukrainian territory. Russians have taken all the civilians, and we don't know where, but they have taken them somewhere to Russian territory. Also, there were a lot of militaries who were injured, and we were, thanks to the support of Elon Musk, these Starlinks, we were receiving the regular videos from the plant on a regular basis, like every second day, and there were almost hundreds of those wounded. As a result, last week, about 7 buses with those soldiers were left the territory of the plant towards the Russian territory. We don't know what is going to be with them next, but we know that on Wednesday, Russian legislators were going to issue the law that these people will not be able to be exchanged or freed. So kind of like they want to keep them and make their success story, so to say, how they fought Nazis, because this is the battalion that was mostly accused of ultra-right ideas. However, no solid proof to that was ever found. These are the numbers, short numbers of what are the losses of Russian army. And as you can see, the number of the personnel is the dead soldiers is approaching 30,000. It means that those wounded would be about 100,000 more. Also, they do not care to take the bodies of the soldiers, and Ukrainian railroads system, they have the special refrigerated cars to store the bodies of Russian soldiers, because this is what humans do usually. Last time we promised to talk a little bit more about the sound example of how much damage can be done to a village. And there is a village named Moshchun in Kyiv oblast. This is actually the village where parents of our colleague, Denis Serhiyenko, parents used to live. And the damage to that village is the probably screaming example of how much Ukraine is going to need to rebuild. This is very close to what we are doing. This is the topic. This is the example of deliberate destroying of the infrastructure, civilian homes, and everything that they could destroy just because of rage, or why else, I don't know. Of course, this village was probably the, as it says here, turning point of the battle for Kyiv, because a lot of the nearest towns and villages, they played huge role in the rescue of Kyiv. You know that the number one priority for the Russian soldiers were to capture Kyiv and to kill Zelensky, our president. They failed with this mission. However, they took revenge, so to say, on those nearby villages. Of course, they were doing the artillery towards Kyiv from those locations, but they were also applying the missiles and aircraft bombing to these villages, which proves that that was a deliberate destroying of the civil objects, not the military, because our soldiers were not there in that amount. They were just fighting back, but not staying there and counterattacking from these villages. So there was a certain project done to estimate the losses, and this project involved the digital photo and video recording of the damages from the air. According to it, the infrastructure of the damage to the infrastructure was totaling over 1 billion of Ukrainian hryvnias. For you to understand it in American currency, in dollars, divide by 3. 2,000 total buildings destroyed. 2,000, not 100. That was a big village. And out of those 2,000, almost 1,000 were the civil homes. I understand that sometimes casualties happen and during the war, and civilian houses get damaged, but half of the damage done to the village is done to the houses of civilians. That is deliberate destruction. Nothing else can be concluded from this. Also, it includes 20 industrial buildings, greenhouses, hotels, even hotels so it was a well-developed village with some recreational activity. The losses done to the industrial facilities, as you can see, is almost $1 million, a little bit less. But the houses, again, I'm focused mainly on the people's homes and houses for the reason that these people, they have been spending their earnings over decades to build a house, maybe a garage or a greenhouse or something else there. Could you please turn off the microphone? Thank you. So the damages to the civilian homes and buildings in their yards equal $32 million. And this is just one of the villages. According to those villages that suffered least, every 10th household is destroyed and needs to be reconstructed. So let's shift to the planting season. In Ukraine, you know that the farmers continue to do planting, disregarding the risks, and the risks are very serious. First of all, the mined fields. I've been doing the presentation and collecting the information to show to the world how dangerous it is to do the farming, and today we will be inviting one of the participants. I hope that he will join because it is a high planting season for them, and we all have seen. Okay, so here is, by the way, Alan Perry, one of our speakers joining. However, the farmer who we invited today is farming about 10 miles from the actual actual war line, and he is going to share his opinion. However, the mining problem is probably one of the two main ones, disregarding the missiles problem. So when Russians were on these territories that now are free from the military, they were deliberately mining the fields with the distance systems, which means that they could, within 10 to 15 miles, could land the landmines, could launch landmines according to the precision map. That was the map used by their soldiers to know how to pass through that minefield. And of course, the first reason why they had this developed were the battlefields. Instead of using it for the battlefields, they used it in the fields of the agricultural production. So agricultural fields have become the second battlefields in this war. Speaking of the season, so out of the land that at the beginning of the spring were projected to be planted, 90% is planted. However, how many of the acres cannot be planted? This is what we are going to analyze here. There is one interesting fact that due to the problems with the export and inability to find enough seeds, and also the costs of production for the crops like soybean and corn, farmers are shifting in Ukraine, and that was the recommendation of the ministry, but farmers support that idea. They are shifting to the crops for the direct consumption of people, and also like niche crops. That results in more acreage under wheat, oats, a little bit more barley, sugar beet, and of course such grains as buckwheat, which is consumed by Ukrainians directly. So it's not processed for the animals. The planting season is happening in 23 out of 25 regions of Ukraine. The 25th is Autonomous Republic Crimea. We do not have any understanding of what is happening there. And of course, Luhansk Oblast, which is the most damaged oblast in Ukraine due to the war, and it is still the most active zone. Agricultural production is not happening there. Like I said, corn and sunflower, those are the commodities that will result in the reduction of production, because first of all, corn requires a lot of inputs, which we have shortage right now, and according to different estimates, from 60 to 75% of shortage we had on fuel, fertilizers, chemicals, and so on. Also, sunflower, we have the majority of the seeds, sunflower seeds, being imported to Ukraine, and import, the logistics has suffered serious damages, and import is hard thing to do right now. Therefore, sunflower acres are going to be reduced. What does it mean for the world? Ukraine is producing about half of the total sunflower production worldwide. It means that all the other countries, like the closest European countries, also of course Russia, United States, and some South American countries, they will try to catch up with it, but covering 50%, so catching up 50% of the total production is not going to be resolved within 1 year. So there is going to be a shortage of sunflower oil and sunflower cake and all the products that are coming from sunflower. According to the seed supply for corn, majority of those are already in Ukraine. However, like I said, the production of corn requires big inputs, and that is the problem. Let's proceed. Here is the total breakdown of what has been planted as of May 12th. And on the right side, you can see the similar period data on the hectares that were planted last year. So on some positions, we have a little reduction, but on the other, the reduction in acres is almost like half. If you are interested, you will be able to double check this information later, because our recording of today's meeting will be on YouTube. However, everything here is showing the shortages, like potential for shortages into the world market of these crops. Speaking of such crops that Ukraine consumes, like buckwheat, there is a prediction, according to some media, agricultural resources, that although farmers are tending to plant more of these commodities, the shortage will be still huge, for the reason that the increase of the production in some areas will not be able to cover the total inability to plant these crops in other areas. So, for example, Western Ukraine will be planting more of the flax, for example. However, flax is mostly produced in Kherson oblast, and Kherson oblast is totally occupied. Therefore, slight increase in the acreage for this crop in other oblasts, not specializing in it, will not be able to cover the total inability of production in the #1 oblast producing these crops. There are a lot of attempts how to support the farmers, and there were programs the programs from the government to provide loans, which are free of the interest, and collateral is provided by the government. But still, there are a lot of issues with these programs. And first of all, it is the problem with the war. For example, the farmer who we invited today to the talk, he is in a very active zone, and therefore he cannot get the loan. They said that you are too risky for us. There are limits on these loans, and the total pool of dollars is limited.
Jag sitter lite grann i ett möte här. Är det någonting som du vill ha svar på?
Turn off the microphone. Thank you. So here are the issues of Ukrainian planting season. And first of all, the reduction of the
jag kan ju lite grann, Albin Gunnarsson hos oss kan lite grann, men om vi kan tillräckligt, eller om vi ska hitta någon som kan mer, det kan inte lista ut på rakan.
Yes, okay. So let's speak about total harvest that is predicted this year. So first of all, due to the limited acreage where the crops are going to be planted, we have lesser potential to harvest these crops. Secondly, the inputs shortages create lower predicted yields. And both of these facts will result in the reduced production. For example, in case of wheat, it might be half less produced this year. That is a huge amount, taking into consideration the role of Ukraine on the world market, on the wheat world market. Also, we need to understand that we have a lot of wheat in Ukraine right now from the past year, a lot of fields with winter wheat. This is the majority of wheat that we produce, not spring, but winter, are mined. Farmers cannot identify the mines when the canopy is growing. Therefore, there will be troubles. It is like a Russian roulette for them to harvest or not. Barley production may result in reduction, also half. Corn, half of the total volume produced last year will be produced this year. You see how serious are these predictions. Of course, these are just predictions and nobody can know for sure. Ukrainian farmers are risky people. They can decide to do the harvesting disregarding the danger, or planting, or maybe the season will turn better in terms of the climate conditions, and we would have more moisture that can result in better yields. These are predictions, however, they are not, they are very substantial losses in the total harvested volume. On this table here, let me translate for you. So this is the dynamics of the production of grain crops. That is the area, the total acreage. That is the total production. So you see here, in the year 2019, we had 15.3 million hectares produced of grain crops, and the production was 75 billion tons. Then we had a little reduction in 2020 because of the dry year. 2021 was okay, and here how it drops, the prediction drops in 2022. Okay, let's proceed. Yes, like I said, the reasons I have mentioned already, some of these. We have reduction of areas for the spring crops, and according to the estimates, there is going to be at least 40% less planted of spring crops like corn, soybeans. So the acreage out of 28 million of total hectares in Ukraine, 70 million of acres, part of it will not be planted. So we had winter crops, and then we have the spring crops. So out of the projected spring crops acreage, 40% will not be planted due to the war or due to the destroyed landscape or mined fields. A lot of winter crops were lost. And according to, winter crops, they are taking about 40% in the total production. So from 35 to 45 probably, depending on the season. For you to understand, winter crops are planted in the fall. Depending on how they survive through the winter is the acreage for the spring crops. For example, if the winter was bad, the acreage under the spring crop increases. If the winter was okay, the acreage remains what was left in the fall. Therefore, it always kind of like fine-tunes the total acreage usage in Ukraine. And these times, if, for example, winter crops were destroyed, although the destruction is, overwintering was very good and losses were minimum, there are a lot of losses due to the war. They are huge comparison to what the nature resulted in. Secondly, the lack of the supplies. This is another issue that is going to reduce the yields. Speaking of the climate, nobody focused on the climate right now, how different it is from the previous years. Unfortunately, not much different. We still lack moisture and we have very strong winds. This is what we have right now. And although it is probably not that severe, this issue is not that severe as it was in the year 2020. However, it is still affecting their potential result. Oil crops, they probably will be, here we exclude sunflower, we speak only about rapeseed and soybeans. So for canola, rapeseed, majority of the past crop was already exported. So right now what is left, that's just minimum amounts. Soybeans and rapeseed this year will be reduced as well, but that is probably the least reduction in the acreage under the crops compared to the others. About this graph, so the black here, the dark green is sunflower, this is soybeans, this is canola. Also there is flax, but it is very small amount of flax, you will not be able to see. This is the color for flax, and mustard is on top. Just compare the columns this year and all the previous years. Even the worst year, by the way, 2020 was the worst year over 100 years in terms of climatic conditions for production. Even nature didn't cause these damages to the season like the human did. So the total production of grain will be at least 51% lower than the previous season. Of course, the previous season was the record for Ukraine. We had a good infrastructure, we had a lot of acreage involved, we had a good supply of inputs, so everything was premium last year. But this year it will be half. We have enough. Even with this reduction, we still will have enough for the Ukrainian consumption inside the country. Ukrainians will not feel the shortages. The price might be different, but the availability of the commodities will be there. The problem is with the countries which were buying from Ukraine. And you know that I've been mentioning that for a number of times. Ukraine can feed up to 600 million people worldwide. So with our population of 43 million, all the rest was sold abroad. How much the damage of the war will do to the countries in the world? Again, we are coming back to this food shortages and food supply crisis. According to what our ministry estimated, the effect of this war, even if it finishes very quickly and successfully, for the Ukraine and for the Western world, with the victory of Ukraine, the results will be there in action, the consequences will be in the world at least 5 years. Of course, the economy of Ukraine is suffering very much. For you to understand, agricultural industry makes up 40% of Ukrainian revenue from the export. So taking into consideration that the damage done to agriculture, to Ukrainian agriculture, is equaling, according to the estimations of UNO, United Nations Organization, is about $6.2 billion. Then comes the infrastructural damages. So 6.2, this is the direct losses. Then comes the secondary losses and infrastructural losses. According to FSA and UNO, the estimated losses, economical losses, can be equaling up to $200 billion. This is very rough. I'm mentioning their top number. However, this is the potentially possible loss. How many years will it take for Ukraine and for the world to fix all what was lost due to the war, all these damages, all these destroyed infrastructures, and so it bears the impact, not only targeting Ukraine, but again the whole world, Europe, first of all, and not only in the war actions. Nothing has changed radically. Maybe let's talk about export a little bit later. Alan, are you there? Can you join the talk?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, Alan. Good morning. So I would like to invite our guest today, Alan Perry. He is the consultant on the fertility production, on the soil fertility fine-tuning. And last year, Alan and his colleagues from Germany and United States came to Ukraine on our tour to inspect the technologies in four farms in Ukraine. As a result, Alan is working with a number of those companies, and he has some information on how these farmers are doing firsthand, so to say. Because what I'm saying is are farmers in mainly grains production, but Alan's contacts, they are in potatoes and vegetables production. So Alan, please, I will stop sharing the screen and for us to see you well. Yes. So what can you tell about the Adelaida, the farm that you work with?
Well, the reason there's two or three things that have made it possible for us to stay in touch. One is that they can provide their own translation services. One of the family members speaks English and allows me to talk with them without any extra help. Roman and his crew have been busy working on other things, and so it's been helpful to have that direct conversation. The second thing was, when I was in Ukraine before I left, we set up a standing time for a weekly meeting, which we have been having since I left. There are times when either I will have a conflict or they will, and we'll skip a meeting, but that time is always there for us to talk, and we have been using that. What I can say is that farming is difficult under any circumstances. Planting and harvest times, there's too much to do, not enough help. Money is always in short supply, and it's a stressful business, as you all know. It is amazing to me that these farmers that I have been talking to still operate and have conversations that look just like conversations would last year or the year before, even though there's a war going on, and in some cases quite literally right outside. This particular farm is mostly potatoes that I'm working on, and they have two blocks of land. A northern part of the farm is up near Kyiv, a little bit west of Kyiv. It's approximately half their acreage, and the southern block is in Kherson. And so if you've been watching it all, you know that's the center of a lot of the war activity in the south. We had been working on both blocks since last summer. One of the things that
you're talking about Kherson Oblast, right, Alan?
Yes,
Kherson.
that's correct. Yes.
For everyone to understand, Kherson, if you look at the map of Ukraine, is the oblast which connects the Crimea Peninsula to the continent. It was very important for the invaders from the standpoint of view on the direct route to Kherson and to Crimea, and also Kherson is the most developed oblast in terms of irrigation. And the irrigation system is supplying or was supplying water to the northern part of Crimea, which is very dry but has fertile soils. Therefore, it was one of the first oblasts very well occupied. Of course, there are a lot of things to talk here about. I mean, in the reason why it was so quickly occupied. And but that is different thing. That is military, and they will need to resolve that problem or analyze it. However, what we have right now, Kherson is like Ukrainian California. It has a lot of fresh vegetables, open field. It has irrigation. It has access to the sea. So it was huge agricultural region, both acreage-wise, production-wise, economically-wise. Why I'm saying was because we do not know what's happening there right now. So please, Alan, sorry for the interruption.
No, that's fine. The context is helpful. It also, because of the climate, is a little bit different cropping year seasonally than the north, and so it allows them to get some potatoes into the market at a little different time frame. And since last summer, we have focused quite hard on the farm in the southern part down there, and the nature of our program, we had started applying fertility items last fall and liming things that we thought needed, but other fertilizer as well. And as a result, a lot of the fertilizer we needed for this crop had already been applied before the war. And so that was lucky, but helpful in this case. But of course, they were extremely disappointed to lose that southern acreage, and on their farm they actually had a sort of Russian headquarters set up on the farm. Lots of activity, lots of people, lots of vehicles. They showed pictures of the house I stayed in last summer with multiple holes in the walls and the roof and things. And so our focus kind of changed to the northern part of the farm, and how we could increase production there to try to take some pressure off the southern acreage that was lost. A lot of the equipment was in the south, the GPS oriented equipment, a lot of computer things, some fairly specialized planters were down there. But I got a call, I guess probably a month ago now, and they were pleased to let me know that they had just finished planting about 350 acres of potatoes on the southern farm. And I was didn't know that we were even able to go there, let alone work there. And they just smiled and said, well, we pretended that the soldiers on the farm weren't there. We went and got our equipment. We went to the field and started doing what we usually do. And many of the soldiers had not seen mechanized agriculture before, and were more interested in our farming than they were in the fighting. And so they simply allowed us to go plant our potato crop. They're not so certain what will happen from here on through the summer, whether they can maintain them and harvest them, but the first step has been done. Again, a lot of the fertility program was already in place, so they managed to use that. Last summer, this farm had an open house for a new potato storage facility they had, and it was open to probably mostly potato farmers, but maybe others as well. And they produced a hat for that event that they gave to the participants that had the farmer's name on it. And while they were there planting the potatoes this spring, they noticed that some of the Russian soldiers were wearing those hats. They don't know exactly where they got them, but they were somewhat amused that that was what they were doing. But I think that certainly Ukraine is showing the world what they're made of, and it's an awful lot of good. So we are also planting in the northern part as we expected to, a little less eventful and stressful there perhaps. We'll have to see if the inputs can keep up for disease control and some of the things they need to do this summer. But again, mostly by luck, the fact that we started working on our fertility programs as we normally do last year for this year's crop put a lot of things in place. But they've done a tremendous job to get the help together and get what they needed to plant that crop.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And speaking of the inputs, have they mentioned whether they succeeded to find enough inputs for this supply? Because for everybody to understand, the regions which were first of all occupied, they dominated in production of small grains and potatoes. And therefore, so Chernihiv Oblast is known as the potato country in the world. Kherson Oblast, it has a lot of potatoes as well because of irrigation. Small grains are usually planted in those areas in the dry lands. And as a result, we have a lot of huge reduction in small grains. So what about the Zhytomyr cluster for them region? Do they have enough of the inputs? And also, of course, in Kherson, were they able to supply all the inputs for the production for this season?
I don't think they have been able to look very far ahead yet, at least not in our discussions. I'm sure they're thinking of it and working on it, but I think my impression is they're very day-to-day and short-term oriented. They're trying to solve today's problem and tomorrow's problem, looking at what they might need for the summer, but I don't think they feel like they can solve that yet. Fuel has been one of the top issues, a lot of competition for what fuel there is, but they have managed. And again, people are resourceful. Farmers are especially resourceful, and they are finding a way to get some of what they need. I know in terms of some of the fertility things up north, some of those were imported things that weren't commonly in the Ukrainian fertilizer market, but we've been working on this all winter. And Victor was able to go out and get some things from Turkey and a couple other foreign countries. And I don't know how they got there, but they did, and they have applied it. We talked about labor a little bit a few times. The farm labor situation is getting some priority. If you have people that are working on a farm, they're not expected to go fight, and they can shift some priorities. The government is putting as much priority on agriculture as fighting in some ways. So they have enough help, apparently. I think they're limited in terms of how fast they can do things, perhaps, but again, they're doing what they can do. I don't know if we can keep up with fungicides and things like that, but that might be able to come from Europe more. I'm not altogether sure where some of the manufacturing sites are. I suspect Germany is one of those, probably Holland, maybe even the UK, I don't know, but those might show up in time. Especially with less acreage in the country as a whole, there's going to be less pressure on the overall need for that. I suspect the supply is probably somewhere if you can get it. Transportation is an issue. Other than that, they're probably okay until fall. But in this case, they don't have access to their storages, and I don't know what we do there. They have about 2,000 tons of chipped potatoes in one of the storages, and they can't get to them. And they sent me a picture of the fry color, and it's basically perfect. It's what we would call 10-1s. It's as good as it gets, of course, but they can't get to them. They'll probably lose those. But I think the processing plant was hit with a missile a couple weeks earlier and maybe out of commission anyway. I'm not sure the status there, how quickly they can fix it or how quickly they want to fix it. But
so they have their own processing facility for the chipped potato, right?
No, these are going to Pepsi, Frito-Lay. Yeah. And you'd have to get some information from them, how fast will they try to fix a problem, or will they wait till it's a little safer to fix so they don't have to fix it twice, or labor issues that they might have. I don't know what their status is.
Okay.
But the chip potatoes are fairly fragile. They have a shelf life. They don't have a lot of expectation they're going to be able to rescue those, but they still need access to their storages at harvest time. And I think that, along with the grains, is where the first big bottleneck is going to come from, creating accessible storage for grains and potatoes and other more perishable things. Some of these things, like peas, are processed directly out of the field. That process has to be fairly smooth, or you'll lose that production. So there's some challenges ahead.
Yes, of course, and we know that the limited of storage, limitation of storage is huge, for the reason that still we have 20 million tons of the previous harvest commodities, and more to come, of course, and a lot of damages have been done to the storage facilities. When Russians came into the villages, they were targeting to destroy, first of all, their most expensive parts of the elevators and storage facilities. Okay, thank you very much.
One benefit there, because so much of the Ukrainian crops are exported, you'll have some allies. Those customers who aren't getting their product are going to try equally hard to help you find a way to make that export. So there will be increasing help coming from the Middle East, from some of those places that are short of this product, trying to help you find a way to get to it. So maybe something good will happen there.
We hope so. We very much hope so. There was an attempt to negotiate with Russia the possibility to export Ukrainian commodities in return for them to get the possibility to export their fertilizers. However, a lot of first of all, we all know that any of the agreement with Russia is not worth even the paper that agreement was made on. And secondly, it will also start bringing money to Russians, and they can fuel their army machine with these new incomes. Thank you very much, Alan, for the update. We will be moving towards the second visitor here, Vitalii Vitut. Vitalii? Okay, he was just here, but he left. Okay, so we have one more guest invited, and he was here, I saw while Alan was talking, but right now he probably needed to leave. I'm trying to let me show some of the photographs of his people working. You all probably have seen these photographs. This is his one of his drivers. As he told me last time when I talked to him, they are working and the helicopters are flying just alongside with the tractors. So close they are to the line of the war. Okay. Here is also one more of the photographs. Vitalii, вы тут? He's writing that he's joining. Let's give him 1 minute to join. Meanwhile, I would like to say that we would be grateful if you could spread the information about our bi-weekly, this event that is happening right now, because this is going to be the major information session, informative session on what's going on in Ukraine, as well as our project. So we are targeting here the outreach to the people, and any help is a great help here. And we will be, okay, let me allow him in. Vitalii, вы же тут? Not yet. Just a second. Yes, he's here. Okay, joining. Vitalii, доброго дня. Connecting to my audio. Віталій, день добрий. Чуєте
Доброго
мене?
дня. Добрий день.
Радий вас чути. Можете включити камеру? Зручно, є можливість така?
Да, зараз спробуємо.
Угу. О, добрий день. В здраві і в роботі. So, here is Vitalii. He is the farmer in Zaporizhia Oblast. I will be translating what he says. Пан Віталій, в двох словах скажіть, будь ласка, про своє господарство, чим ви займаєтесь і саме головне, де?
Нас господарство товариство
перекладав.
Да, товариство наша агрофірма Лев, Запорізька область, Запорізький район, селище міського типу Комишуваха.
So Vitalii is farming. His farm is named Lev, Zaporizhia Oblast, and the smaller region is next to the actual Zaporizhia city, which is another very important target for Russians. Ще раз, будь ласка, як село називається?
Комишуваха. Комишуваха.
The village name is Komyshovaha. Скільки у вас гектар, скільки працівників, якщо не секрет?
У нас невелике господарство, 2000 гектар землі, 20 співробітників. В цей складний час працюємо, ну, знаєте, як, працюємо на тих резервах, на тих запасах, які в нас були ще взяті, куплені до Нового року. Паливо закінчилося, посівний матеріал закінчується, дякуючи Богу, добрива є.
So we farm about 2,000 hectares, relatively small farm. We have 20 people working with us, and we continue to do the planting along with using the inputs that we were able to purchase in the fall before the season. The fuel is already out. We still have some seeds, and thanks God, we have enough fertilizers purchased upfront. А з пальним ви кажете, є якісь варіанти зараз його знайти?
Да, дзвонять комерційні структури, предлагають по 70 гривень за літру. Але, скажу чесно, це дуже непід'ємна ціна. Дуже непід'ємна ціна. Так що
якою вона була 23 лютого?
Яка ціна була?
Так.
26 чи 28 гривень, щось таке було на початок війни.
А зараз 57 пропонують?
70.
So, for you to understand, the price for fuel on the 23rd of February was about 25 UAH, Ukrainian hryvnias. Right now, what he can buy, the commercial companies are offering him for 70. So it is almost 3 times higher. And for them, the price is too high to afford. Стосовно людей, ви згадали, що 20 чоловік. Скільки з працівників довелося відпустити в армію?
2 чоловіка пішло в армію, їх призвали, мобілізували. Останні хлопці на місці. Зробили ми бронювання на них. Так що всі працюють, дякуючи їхнім жінкам, що відпускають на роботу. Деякі робітники з сусідніх сел, які в нас працюють, уїхали в Запоріжжя жити, в обласний центр, бо дуже обстріляли села рядышком. І вони живуть в Запоріжжі, їздять на роботу із Запоріжжя.
So, speaking of the employers, out of 20 employers, 2 went to the army. The other men, they needed to provide their reasoning for them staying in the agricultural production, because there is a law in Ukraine which sets the agricultural production season as a priority towards the military. Also, a lot of and he's thankful to the women of the other men who are working in the fields for them to allow them to work, because the work in their fields is very dangerous. And just like I said, it is very close to the war zone. A lot of the employers needed to leave their village houses and rent apartments in Zaporizhia, in the capital of this oblast, because their villages were severely damaged. This is again the reason why we are talking about this within the World to Rebuild Rural Ukraine. Пане Віталій, а стосовно ці фотографії, тобто розкажіть про взагалі небезпекову ситуацію в полях.
Ну, небезпека полягає в тому, що буквально від нас в 30 кілометрах йдуть бойові дії. Це напрямок Василівки, десь кілометрів 30, і напрямок Оріхова 50 кілометрів. І от з Василівського напрямку до нас в селище буквально на тій неділі були серйозні прильоти. Мабуть, брили з якихось мінометних установок або саушок таких серйозних, бо у нас в селищі 60 домівок розрушило, 4 будинка горіли, одна людина цивільна загинула. І ми в тому направленні працюємо в бронежилетах і в касках. Дякуючи нашим Збройним силам, нам допомогли з бронежилетами, з касками, і ми всіх співробітників як снабдили цим і працюємо.
So I asked about the safety or like danger of working in the fields, because we stick to the notion that agricultural fields are the second battlefields. He says that last week there was a serious shelling of their village, and right now the damages to their civil homes is resulting in 60 homes. One civilian died. There are a lot of those injured. They are within 30 kilometers from the active war zone, and the Ukrainian army, they supplied these helmets and bulletproof vests for their people, for his drivers, to be able to work in the fields. Скажіть, будь ласка, стосовно мінування полів, яка ситуація? Чи є така проблема, що вже поля заміновані?
Да, є така проблема. Ви знаєте, поля, буквально десь місяць по тому, коли був перший прильот в наше селище, то на поля поприлітали касетні бомби із ракети «Смерч». Це дуже здорова така, дуже длинна така ракета, в якій на місці десь порядка 72 елемента боєголовок маленьких таких. І вони з білими вірьовочками йдуть. Я вам скину фото, ви побачите. І от коли ми приїхали, побачили ці елементи, ми позвонили 101 нашим МЧСникам, і вони сказали не трогать, приїхали на це поле. І ви знаєте, навіть був випадок, що сам сапер на цій касетній бомбі підірвався, прямо у нас на полі. Ну, потім через другий день приїхали інші сапери, розмінували, убрали, і ми, слава Богу, посіяли це поле. І також на других полях ми багато чого знаходили цікаво. Я зараз вам відео скину.
We had the situation when the Smerch rocket missile, it is a long missile that has about 72 units, cassette bombs with white threads, wires outside, and it landed on their field. So when they saw these cassette bombs on the field, they called, of course, the police, the military, and at the beginning, the first troop of those who came to demine the field, one of the experts exploded on their field. So he unfortunately got, he was killed. Then the second troop came, and thanks God, he says, they cleared the field from those cassette bombs. But we are finding a lot of stuff, and I will share the videos later on with you for you to see how many presents we are collecting in the fields. А стосовно взагалі зменшення акрів, гектарів під посівом, тобто ви плануєте цього року всі свої поля засіяти, чи є якийсь відсоток, що ви не зможете?
В нашому господарстві порядка 90 гектар на окупованій території знаходяться. Але так, ну, трошки, як знаєте, брали в оренду поля, де була можливість. Але господарство молоде, тільки нашому господарстві 9 років. І знаєте, і десь порядка 250 гектар, де ми не можемо заїхати, бо там йдуть інтенсивні бойові дії. Це наша, як сказати, сіра зона, куди ми не можемо потрапити. Не можемо пшеничку обробити. Отак. Ну, а
озимі, да?
Да, озимі. А останні там 1700 гектар ми зможемо працювати, працюємо на них. А порядка 300 ми не можемо.
I asked about the availability to the fields. So ability to access the fields due to the war. How many of the hectares are unreachable? Vitalii said that about 90 hectares of land is in the occupied part of the oblast. They were taking the land wherever they could. They are quite a young farm, only 9 years old. So they are farming any available land in the region. About 250 hectares are in the so-called gray zone, where the active military actions are taking place. So it is neither occupied nor it is free to farm. Therefore, out of 2,000, they are hoping to farm about 1,600 hectares. And those 250, this is the winter wheat. Які культури ви вирощуєте здебільшого, скажіть, будь ласка?
У нас в основному це озима пшениця, озимий ячмінь. Зараз сіємо соняшник, трошки кукурузи. І в цьому році посіяли сочевицю, чечевицю.
So the crops, they produce...
Ріпак.
Majority of the crops are winter crops. Winter barley, winter wheat. Also, they plan to plant corn, a little bit of sunflower, lentils, and canola, of course. Скажіть стосовно, якщо взяти так от 5 найбільших проблем, з якими ви зараз стикаєтесь, і допомоги уряду, наскільки це все так, як воно працює, так як воно заявлено в медіа, наскільки воно працює, наскільки воно допомагає фермерам?
Ви знаєте, от я за себе особисто скажу, 2,5 місяці по тому подав заявку в Укргазбанк на кредитування по державній підтримці. Його немає до сих пор. Цей механізм не працює. Дуже прикро, звісно. Я розумію, що в державі, мабуть, найбільші проблеми: війна, оборона держави, гуманітарна криза в державі. Але пойміть, якщо нас держава не підтримує, то я думаю, мабуть, буде продовольча криза. От ми ж з цим я особисто, моє господарство з цим столкнулися, що це велика проблема. Немає фінансування обіцяно, немає.
So I asked, what are the main issues that he is facing right now? Speaking of the loans, that the program that was promised to the farmers with the zero interest rate and collateral provided by the government. Vitalii says that he understands that the war is going on, and the government, they have their priorities, how to secure, to fight back the land. However, he says that we, the farmers, and he's speaking first of all from his standpoint of view, from his subjective point of view, he applied for the loan in Ukrgazbank about 2.5 months ago, just at the beginning of this program, and still he had no financing. He says that he understands all the difficulties, but he mentioned that if they are not helped, this crisis, the war crisis and humanitarian crisis, will add another one, the food crisis, because a lot of farmers just will not be able to make it through the season. Це що стосується фінансів. А як відносно інших моментів? Тобто, які наступні номер 1, 2, 3 проблеми, з якими ви стикаєтесь?
Ну, ви знаєте, я вже називав ціна на дизельне паливо і неможливість його взагалі придбання. Де ти, наприклад, можеш його купити по нормальній ціні, да? Але його нема в наявності. Ти якось, знаєш, вирішуєш ці питання, ну, вибачте, договорняками. Їздиш ночі, в комендантський час, домовляєшся, щоб тобі відпустили трошки більше, чим взагалі людям. Не стоїш в черзі по 4-5 годин, а їдеш ночі, ну, це дякуючи, що в мене є спецперепустка, я можу ночі поїхати, да? Ну, знаєте, це не робота. Моєму господарстві на день потрібно близько тонни палива. 900 тонн ми в день спалюємо. Оприскуємо, сіємо, культивуємо. Ну, працює повен цикл. Щоб ішов, треба тонна палива. А ви знаєте, в одні руки зараз дають 10-20 літрів. Ну, це неможливо. Ну, так. Їдемо, це, вибачте, шкурняками займаємося.
So the issue of fuel shortage is huge. His farm needs about 1 metric ton of fuel per day during the season, and thanks to his connections, he acquired this pass that allows him to travel even in the night time, because in Ukraine we have this limitation on timing when people can leave their homes. In the night time it is forbidden. Therefore, he has this pass, and he is able to drive around all those companies that supply fuel in the nighttime and do some deals, maybe a little bit more expensive, to get this fuel, because what one person can get in the gas station is 20 to 30 liters, and he needs 1 ton. You can imagine how difficult that is. And this is this is where we speak about the price, the normal price, the affordable price. Of course, buying it 3 times more expensive is another option, but it's just unaffordable. Гаразд тоді. І стосовно самого клімату зараз, чи сприяє, так би мовити, Господь Бог хоча б, наскільки умови посівні і опади нормальні для виробничого сезону?
Ви знаєте, в цьому році опадів було менше, ніж в тому році, да, я вам скажу, за наш регіон, Запорізьку область. Але зараз волога є, погода сприятлива, тільки Господь Бог дає працювати. Ви знаєте, навіть не дивлячись на бойові дії, ми працюємо, але ми з дня на день можемо зупинитись, бо у нас немає нічого, ні палива, ні посівного матеріалу, ну, нічого немає. Отак. Ми виробили те, що у нас було. Якби запаси, які були, ми їх виробили. Але, от, наприклад, нам залишається посіяти 500 гектар соняшника. Все, ми зупиняємось. Ми не можемо нічого робити. Обідно, а що робити? Ходимо, молимося регулярно в церкву, в монастир, але, знаєте, отак.
Тобто всього залишилось 500 гектар досіяти, так?
Так, досіяти. Запланованих 1200, залишилось 500. І важко, знаєте, зараз такий час, що, мабуть, ніхто тобі не кум, не брат, не сват, не позичить ніяку копійку. Всі розуміють, що ця копійка може його родині пригодитися.
So, first of all, speaking of the spring crops, there was total plan to plant 1,200 hectares of spring crops. 500 more is still left, and he says that we can stop any day because we simply do not have resources. And in these times, we do not, we cannot count on taking a loan from our friends or business partners, because everyone spares this money for their families, because they understand that the situation may be worse very soon, and they will need this money for themselves. I asked a question about the climatic condition, whether the nature is helping them to do the planting season. He says that although in the winter time they had fewer rainfall, however, right now the soil is wet enough to do the planting, and they are thankful to God for this ability, as long as they can plant. So this is the issue number one. They need resources to finish the planting. They are, like Ellen said, very resourceful in finding the ways how to get them, but anything has its own limits. Гаразд, Віталію, вам дуже велике дякую за час. Успіхів, удачі, саме головне в плані зі всіма цими факторами, які впливають на посівну. І будемо сподіватися, що ваш меседж почують іноземці, які можуть якось вплинути. Це наше завдання зараз — розповсюдити цю інформацію,
Роман,
по максимуму.
Я вам покидав на Телеграм багато цікавого, подивитися, як проходить посівна, які речі ми познаходили. Будь ласка, відкрийте Телеграм, може цікаво буде нашим партнерам.
Так, обов'язково.
Да.
Обов'язково. So I said, thank you, Vitalii, for your information. Let's hope that this information will reach those people worldwide who can make who can influence it for the best. And he said that he sent me a lot of video materials which I will show you after the end of this session. Віталій, ще одне запитання є для вас. Я бачу, руку підняли. Yes, Alan, you have a question?
just pass on, if you would, Roman, that if he has any issue that comes up this summer that I can be of any help on, feel free to reach out to you, and we'll be happy to help him with whatever we think we can add to this program.
Окей, thank you very much. Віталій, Алан, як консультант, він каже, що я можу запропонувати, це безкоштовні консультації, якщо у вас будуть якісь питання по живленню, чи по захисту, чи, в принципі, якби дистанційний польовий скаутинг. Якщо ви можете під'єднатися, якщо є якась проблема насущна в полі, пишіть мені, і я сконтактую вас з Аланом, тоді спробуємо хоча б, кожен чим може, тим допомагає. В даному випадку Алан запропонував таке рішення. Ось, а так, удачі вам, звісно, знайти і фінансування, і закінчити спокійно, я маю на увазі відносно, наскільки це можливо, спокійно посівну цього року. А всім нам бажаю пошвидше миру. So thank you, Vitalii, for your time, for good luck with planting, with close approaching peace, and stay safe. Тож, Віталій, ми будемо переходити далі, продовжувати. Якщо маєте бажання, звісно, залишайтеся. Ваше відео я покажу по закінченню нашої сьогоднішньої, мені треба буде його підвантажити трішки. А так, в принципі, да, у вас є мій номер телефону. Якщо будуть якісь ідеї, звісно, звертайтесь. Я не буду нічого обіцяти, але, в принципі, тут є люди, які теоретично можуть допомогти, і ми намагаємося їм донести цю інформацію.
Дякую, да. До побачення.
Okay, so we will be continuing right now with the actual. Okay, let me see. It is downloading. The photos and videos are downloading from Vitalii. Maybe I will show them right now if I succeed to download. Yes, just a second. So let's see here. You see what he's pulling out? Everyone can see what I'm showing on the screen.
Yes, we do.
Good.
Зараз оприскуватель пройде, підкормку зробить, тоді зайде культиватор, а тоді я посію.
This driver says that sprayer will do the spraying, then cultivator will cultivate, and I will start planting lentils.
Ну а хто крім нас це буде робити? Хлопці на фронті захищають, а ми тут, у нас теж свій фронт.
This job that we are doing right now. Other boys are in the military, in the war, and we also have our own battlefield here.
За себе не дуже страшно, страшно за сім'ю.
I'm not that worried about myself, I'm worried about my family first of all.
За сина.
У нас
як кажуть, другий фронт. Перший фронт – це наші Збройні сили, другий фронт – ми, сільхозвиробники, які...
As we say, we are the second battlefield. Again, repeating the same idea that military are in the number one battlefield and we are the second.
Для нашої держави старатися як можна.
We are trying to do as much as possible for our government.
Давайте всі готовте, щоб при себе були. Сейчас Андрей уже під'їжджає і виїжджаємо на поле.
Ну, обшили как минимум резиной 1,5-2 сантиметра. Это самые такие
So what they applied here, the thick plates of rubber to secure themselves from the explosions if they drive over the mine.
Ну и даем трактористам бронежилеты, каски. Сейчас взрывы идут.
Бандаж со смерча мы вытягивали своими силами, трактором. Саперы дали добро, она была пустая, чтобы она не мешала при проведении полевых работ.
He's saying that this is the Smerch missile. It was empty, but it still landed in the field. So the the demining troops, they said it is safe to be pulled out with their own tractor.
Раз в один час это 100%. Слышим громыхание. Буквально несколько дней назад наш поселок сильно обстреляли.
So every hour we hear the explosions very, very loudly. So it is happening very close to us. Last week we had our village being shelled by the cassette bombs. This is how we work and live.
Мини-бункер. Бывший пожарный водоем.
That used to be the firefighters' water reservoir. Right now they're using it as the shelter, anti-missile shelter.
Просто перестелили его новыми плитами и 2 метра.
They have put new concrete and 2 meters of clay on top of it.
Хлопці нормально настроєні, дякую їм, дякую їхнім сім'ям, жінкам, що розуміють, що треба працювати, це, значить, їхня заробітна плата, це, опять же, щоб не було у нас зриву посівної кампанії. Всі це розуміють, ризикують.
Моя вся жизнь, моє дитинство.
He's thankful, he's saying thanks to his boys who are working in the field, to their families that allow them to work in these dangerous conditions. Of course, this means salary for the families, and this younger employer says that his whole life has been in the field.
С отцом создавали фирму, и вот просто так бросить уехать как-то.
As far as I understand, he is the son of Vitalii, and he says that we've been developing this agricultural production company from scratch, from nothing, and now leaving it for the occupants, that is not a good decision.
Буквально неділі-дві по тому, значить, це боєзаряд із Смерча прилетів рядом біля нашого поля. На одному полі злікли порядка 50, мабуть, боєголовок таких, іменно, які запрещені Женевською конвенцією.
So these are the cassette bombs. They are forbidden by the Geneva Convents and Geneva regulations of rules of how to run the war. And he says in one field they have found 50 of them, 50.
Вони виїжджають, ризикують, тому що розуміють, яка це є відповідальність і перед державою, і перед пайщиками, і перед населенням. Тому це великий ризик, це великий подвиг того, що вони на сьогоднішній день.
This was the chief administrator, chief of the administration of the village. He says that the farmers, they still continue to work. They understand the risks, however, they understand the responsibility that lies behind this. That this is the food security.
Я думаю, якщо Господу Богу всі помолимось, буде все добре. Дякуючи нашим Збройним силам, ми відіб'ємо ворога.
So this is the optimistic ending. He says that we'll pray to God, and we believe that God will make sure our soldiers will win it back, our land, and we will proceed doing what we have been doing peacefully. Okay, so now if you allow me, I will proceed with the presentation. Not much time will be used. Maybe within, if you have questions, we can fit in it to half an hour to finish it. We still have a couple of topics to discuss. Okay, just a second. So the updates on the export. Yeah, as it was said at the beginning, we still have 20 million metric tons of the grain to be exported. There was the main source of export, the sea. It was able to export about 5 million metric tons within 1 month. And that was almost all the capacity for export. 85% equaled 5 million tons. The rest would be railroads and trucks. Right now, what we have left, railroads and trucks. The ports, there are about 7 ports in Ukraine, and almost all of them, actually all of them, are controlled by Russians. There were questions if Russians destroyed some of them. We do not know for sure what is the status of those ports. However, we've heard that some facilities actually were damaged by Russians. The closest port that we can use right now is Romanian Constanța. This is the port that has smaller capacities. However, it still can be helpful. There are a couple of issues. First of all, that it was contracted with European grain to be exported, and now we need to squeeze in with Ukrainian commodities into the capacity of this port. Therefore, it results in 4 times increase the price over the last month for the reloading from cars to the barges. So right now, having this main artery of export of grain disabled, we are able to do about 600,000, so 0.6 million with the trains, and all the remaining with the trucks to Europe, to EU. There are a lot of programs being developed right now how to increase the capacity of export, because the new harvest is coming within like 2 months, and these storage capacities will be needed for the new harvest. Like I said at the beginning, for the Ukrainian inside consumption, we have enough of the commodities, of the crops, to secure the food supply. However, this results in the risk for the other countries who depend upon our commodities. So the countries nearby to Ukraine, the neighbors, the peaceful neighbors, Poland, Moldova, Slovak, and Hungary, they are looking for the ways how to increase the flow of the trucks and of the rail cars into EU. For you to understand, rail cars in Ukraine has a different size of tracks. Therefore, on the border, the cars need to be re-established on the newer chassis, and it takes time. Also, the paperwork. For example, for the farmers who bring their own trucks to the border, it takes from 12 hours to full day to cross the border, and that is just for one truck. Ukraine, Austria, they are developing their constant supply, constant route of the train that can carry 2,000 metric tons to Austria. This was the first time they arrived from Ukraine on the 6th of May, and they plan to repeat it as many times as possible. So like on a constant basis to be supplying Austria with the commodities. For you to understand, EU has dropped all the requirements on the import of Ukrainian commodities, and has isn't like made easier in paper preparation. Here are some numbers of what we how much one train can export. So there are 25 there cars, and each of it has 1,500 metric tons of grain in it. Germany is also developing the route, providing the train to do the similar thing with Ukrainian commodities. Like I said, a lot of farmers are trying to export with their own trucks. However, it is good for those in the Western Ukraine, but not that economically reasonable for farmers who are in central Ukraine or a little bit further to the east, because it takes huge amount of fuel, which is very limited right now to transport these commodities. And of course, the time is precious too. So about 95% of the rapeseed, as I said, has already been shipped within the first couple of months. The March shipment, they are insufficient to speak about some influence to the world market. Yeah, rapeseed has the best right now conditions, the best situation with the export. Majority of it was exported. We still are doing it and squeezing into the total flow the remainings, and having this higher yields last year. All the canola rapeseed will be exported, no problem. It is like plus 13% compared to the previous season. There have been done serious damages to two huge objects in the agricultural industry. It is the disaster to the total agriculture of Ukraine and Soviet Union, first of all, and even worldwide. First of all, in Kharkiv, there was a bank of plants, of the samples or species of various varieties and hybrids of plants that were collected for hundreds of years. And even when Germans came, they didn't dare to destroy this bank of plants. And you know that there is one, probably the biggest in Greenland. So similar thing we had in Ukraine. And every certain amount of years, these seeds were replanted and harvest was collected in order to preserve something in the bank. So everything was destroyed. About 160,000 varieties and hybrids of seeds were burned. This for you, why they did that? We are trying to find some common sense in their actions, but more we get into it, more we lose this common sense. Because even for their occupants, if they know they will be occupying this land, they would like to preserve the most valuable things on this territory. Here, they are just destroying everything. The second loss was the Institute of the Irrigation Agriculture, again in Kherson. Kherson, like I mentioned, this is the California of Ukraine, and not only Ukraine, but for this whole Soviet Union. Yes, Ukrainian science, agricultural science was underfinanced. However, we had the information from the Soviet times stored in these institutes. And at that time, it was the most state-of-the-art institute in terms of irrigation, because Kherson mainly has his fields irrigated. So for you to understand, all the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan, Russia, Moldova, up to the Asia, all these countries were finding necessary information about irrigation from this institute, and it was still functioning, it was still providing services like soil analysis and so on. However, when Russian army came into Kherson, they destroyed it totally. They burned all the data, all the papers. Why? No one knows. Here is a little bit more of the facts about this, but this institute was used as the base for the military. Still, they could have preserved these elite seeds storages. Instead, they simply thrashed it all over the territory, and they destroyed all the test plots. And now we are going to talk about the actual World to Rebuild Rural Ukraine project a little bit, and our report on what we have come out who we are going to be working in the nearest future with. This is the family in the village of Buzova, and next stage we will be supplying the information about the cost of reconstruction for this family. There are 7 of them, and they were living in this house. Part of this house still survived, but it is not suitable for living. So just the walls are there, and that's all. So it needs to be reconstructed totally. We've done the estimation already. The Metro went to their house with the experts, and we have already collected the data. The first thing next week, we will be sending out the information to our board of ambassadors for the approval of starting to work with this family. They are like I said, the family of 7. They do not have an alternative place to live, and they are right now living in the mobile car that somebody provided for them. So it's like the mobile house, but with a very bad conditions to live. So these are another number of photographs of their house. So March 28th, when the missile destroyed it. And you see, they were trying to keep it nice. It was well decorated, all with their own hands. They didn't hire anyone. As far as we've communicated with them, all the job was done between these 7 people living in this house. That was the small greenhouse that they had at the yard. This is their small production at the back of their yard. They had this motoblock, which is the small cultivator, to farm this land behind their house. They were producing main crops, the vegetables, and had some chickens as well. And the second aid recipient, who we have already talked about last time, we have come up with the estimation of what he needs for his season in terms of equipment. We have created a web page of his farm on our website. Here is the equipment and the losses, the prioritized list of equipment from what he lost. Like for you to remind, we had I talked with him last time, and he mentioned that he's having the refugees from northeast and from Mariupol as well, his cousin. All of them are working in this farm and trying to make the season happen. However, this is what they lost, and they need this equipment in order to finish the season. What we are going to do, we will be spreading the word among the Ukrainian farmers. Maybe some of them have a spare washing equipment that was lost, looted from them, even including the tools and appliances. So anything that Ukrainian farmers can give off for the sake of this farm is a good thing already. So we will be sending out information throughout Ukrainian farmers, first of all, and of course trying to look for the main machinery sources in Ukraine. That is our next step. Meanwhile, this is going to be it for today. This is a small update on the situation in Ukraine and on our World to Rebuild Rural Ukraine project. I'm asking you to help us spread the word about this initiative, because there are thousands of Ukrainian family farms who have suffered severe damages to their houses and to their production facilities. They make up a huge amount in the total production of the goods, but they are still human who lost what they possessed for no reason, unprovoked damage to their life and to their facilities. We are here to help them, and I'm going to continue our tour throughout the United States of America until the end of July to spread the word about the necessity to help them. Thank you very much for your attention. Please subscribe to our channel. More of the interesting facts will be coming in 2 weeks, and more of the reports on how we work within the project World to Rebuild Rural Ukraine is also to be placed within 2 weeks. Other than that, my phone number is on the website here. You can reach me anytime with any questions. We have developed a very transparent system to see how the donations are collected, how they are spent within those in need. Once again, thank you very much. Have a safe weekend and a productive planting season. If you have any questions, this is just the right time to ask them. Bye, everyone.